Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session today. I hope you've enjoyed all of our great keynote presentations and other sessions this morning. I am so excited to be here with you today to talk about customizing your integrations with the Box APIs. I have a lot of information to cover today, and I do want to go ahead and dive right in. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Courtney Meese, and I am a technical support engineer on our product support team. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and I've been at Box for a little bit over 3 years now. I specifically specialize in supporting our API and any of our Box integrations. So you can think of those as Box for Salesforce, Netsuite, G Suite, iWork. We have a whole slew of them, so definitely go ahead and check those out if you haven't. If you've filed a support ticket in the last 3 years in any of those categories, there's a pretty high chance that our paths have crossed before. Today, my objective is to cover the basic fundamentals for IT teams and developers to get started with the Box APIs. So I hope you leave my session understanding the different ways that you can customize Box with your existing business applications and take away foundational knowledge and understanding of the resources necessary to build your own custom integrations. So in order to do that, we're going to start by reviewing the customer problems that the Box APIs can solve for. Then I'll walk you through the steps of creating and configuring your first application. We'll authorize it within your Box Enterprise. And then I'll review the tools we provide to our developers and close with a quick demo. There are 3 main problems that the Box APIs solve for. The first is a need to automate how users, content, and settings are managed within Box. The second is an ability to connect to third-party systems so that end users can continue to work on content directly in Box in a secure and centralized manner. And then the third is an ability to work easily on content, not just within Box, but within both line of business and custom applications. Our APIs solve for all of these problems through automation, integration, and custom experiences. So let's take a closer look at each one of these. Automation is the ability to reduce manual overhead for both admins and IT teams. So our APIs can be used to run scripts to automate actions like provisioning and deprovisioning users, automating user settings like legal holds or use of Box zones, and or creating folders and managing collaborations. Then with integrations, we have business processes that run on Box, and the content, folders, and metadata might actually originate from third-party systems. So by directly integrating with your third-party systems, the content can be centralized in Box, which allows you to manage user collaborations and permissions from within other apps, or apply external classifications to your content. Finally, we have custom experiences, and these facilitate content-driven business processes by having the ability to work on Box content directly within your own business apps. Because Box is the centralized location, you can take advantage of Box's enterprise-grade security and compliance. So at this point, I'm sure you've thought of how you relate to one or more of these problems, and you're eager to go and solve it and get developing. So let me show you how you can start developing your first application. And the first thing I recommend is going and taking a look at our developer documentation. This all is at developer.box.com. And here you're going to find our quick start guides, our more in-depth guides with topics that might be of interest to you. We have a resource section, which contains all of our documentation on how to leverage each one of our endpoints. You'll find our SDKs and developer tools, which I'll further discuss later on. And then how to get in contact with support if something's broken and you need assistance. Now, on your screen, you will see a small button in the top right-hand corner that says My Apps. By clicking on that button, you will be launched over to our developer console, where you'll find a button that says Create New Application. After clicking this, you'll be brought to this next screen. And this is the first decision you need to make. So this screen is asking you to choose your authentication method. And this is how you want to identify users that are coming into your application and authorize the app to take actions on their behalf. Box supports two main types of authentication. The first is standard OAuth 2 with JWT or JSON Web Tokens. And the second is standard OAuth 2. You'll see a third listed up on your screen called App Token Auth, which is for a very specific use case, which I'll cover here in a second. I want to go ahead and take a closer look at JWT. So this is what we call building on the Box platform, and this is the option that most of our customers select. It allows for server-to-server interaction with the Box APIs, and your users don't have to have existing Box accounts. And this means that content can be stored on the application level instead of within the individual user's accounts. Users don't need to know that they're using Box behind the scenes because they don't need to directly log in. And therefore, you're using your own identity management system to authenticate users directly to Box. So this means that when a user visits your app, they're going to be presented with your custom login screen and then authenticated to Box by generating a JWT. Again, that's a JSON Web Token, and that's verified with an RSA key pair. Then we have that special type of authentication I mentioned, a subset of JWT called App Token Auth. And this is used if you want to leverage Box View. So this is what you select if you have a use case where you'd like to take advantage of Box's preview services, but you don't require any of our other components like our permissions, our user model, our file folder structure. So you just want to take content stored in Box, visualize it as HTML5 components, which then makes it available on a multitude of different devices. One very important thing to note about this authentication method is it does provide limited capabilities with our API. So you'll see 4 endpoints mentioned up here on your screen, and those are the only 4 endpoints you'll successfully be able to interact with. A perfect use case for App Token Auth is to integrate with a learning management system. Lastly, we have standard OAuth 2, and this needs to be used with existing managed users, so you will be working with people that already have Box accounts, and users will know that they're using Box when authenticating. The content is stored within these individual users' Box accounts instead of within the application. And the same underlying technology as JWT Auth is used here, but you're just using Box's identity management system instead of your own. So when a user comes into your application, they'll be redirected to Box, where they'll be instructed to enter their username and password, and then they'll authorize the application to take actions on their behalf. If they successfully grant access, they will be redirected back to your application for use. So once you select your authentication method, you will be brought right over to the configuration tab for your app in the developer console. I like to think of this as being where all of your application settings live. And I'm going to walk you through each one of the options and what it means. So for this demonstration, I did select JWT Auth because it is not only the most widely used authentication method, it also covers all of the developer console options with selecting standard OAuth 2, plus a couple extra. So the first thing you'll see here is that authentication method you selected, so you can swap between the two if you've chosen one and decided it doesn't best fit your use case. And then you'll see a developer token. This is very important when you're just getting started. So a developer token is a special type of access token. It is valid for 60 minutes, and it cannot programmatically be refreshed like your normal access and refresh tokens. This is perfect for testing purposes because it doesn't require setting up a complete authentication and authorization system just to test things out. However, you should never embed a developer token within your live production application. When you click the Generate Dev Token button, your token is going to be associated with whatever user was logged into the developer console. So similar to within the web app, you can only use that token to access content that user either owns or has collaboration access to themselves. This goes hand in hand with other security mechanisms like our application scopes and our application access, which narrow what a developer can do even further. I'll cover those momentarily. The next piece of configuration you'll see is your client ID and your client secret. So these are part of the authentication mechanism, and they are unique values assigned to each application. You should never share your client secret, and it should be protected the same as you would a password. However, if you ever ask for support on your application, one of the values we will ask you to provide is your client ID. This is synonymous with API key, and it is okay to share. Next, you'll see application access, and this is a setting specific to JWT apps only. And I think of this as being what types of users am I able to interact with? So when you authorize a JWT app to be able to interact with your Box Enterprise, an account called a service account is automatically generated. And you can then use this service account to go on and make what are called app users. This is how we store content on the application level. So if you select application only, you're only going to be able to interact with the service account, app users, and any of their content. But if you'd like to interact with managed users as well and their content, you need to select Enterprise. So next, we're brought to our application scopes, and these determine which of our 150 plus endpoints your application will successfully be able to interact with. So the first two you'll see are pretty standard. These are our read or read and write capabilities. And usually you will need those read-write capabilities, but in support, I see a lot of concern about being able to interact, read and write with all content stored in your Box Enterprise. However, granting this scope will not provide that, because remember, we have our token that's taken into account and our application access. So if you do grant read and write, you'll get your full CRUD capabilities on your files and folders. So you can upload, you can view, you can download, and you'll also be able to interact with your collaborations, your tasks, comments, and collections. And we have manage users. So you want the scope if you want your CRUD capabilities with users. So the ability to be able to activate or deactivate them, as well as our manage groups. So if you want to be able to manage groups and group membership, you'll need that scope. Then we have manage webhooks, and webhooks are the ability to programmatically listen for events within an app. So if you want CRUD capabilities for both creating and maintaining webhooks, go ahead and select this scope. Manage enterprise properties is the ability to read and update your enterprise settings and any reports generated. So one example you would need the scope for is if you want to be able to edit or delete device pins. And those are used to determine what devices can access your native Box applications. Manage retention policies is geared towards our add-on product Box governance. So you'll be able to enable rules over how your files and folders are deleted and maintained over the longevity of your account. So this is specifically used for compliance regulations. This requires an extra scope, which you will need to contact support for, and that's called our Global Content Manager scope. And that means that the admin token that's being used here will be able to interact with content that they directly don't either own or have collaborator access to, which is not typical for Box. And then finally, we have enabling integrations. And this simply enables something called Box elements, which are visualization components I recommend you take a deeper dive into, and all of that documentation lives on our developer site. Then we have our advanced features. And this determines if and how you want to interact with users. So these are actually two ways of accomplishing the same task. So the first one is as user. We call this the as user header. And this is comparable to our web app capability in the admin console. In the Users and Groups tab, you can log in as any of your managed users and take actions on their behalf. So you'll need this header if you'd like to do something similar with the API. Alternatively, you can generate access tokens directly for those users, and you'll need the second option. The next setting here is specific to JWT apps only. And since with JWT, you're bringing in your own identity management system, we need a way of being able to identify users that are coming into your app, which is done through a public-private key pair. And so you have two ways of doing this. You can either generate your public-private key pair on your own and store the public key within Box, or you can have Box generate both for you. We recommend the latter because it will get you over a barrier of getting started. However, that option does require two-factor authentication to be enabled on your account, and there is currently no way around this. I also want to remind you to make sure that these values are protected in the same way that you would protect any sensitive information. So you need to have restricted access within your app to these values, and you need a security infrastructure in place to ensure that they are not leaked. Finally, we are brought to our core settings, and core stands for cross-origin resource sharing. So this is a way of working with your browser's security model. So API calls can only be made to the same domain, subdomain, or port where the originating request came from. So requests such as those from the Box API will be restricted. And the way to work around that is to add that domain, subdomain, or port to the allow list you see. This setting is only applicable for Java-based applications that are making API calls to the Box APIs, so you may not even need this configuration option. If you were to go ahead and try to make an API call right now, you would receive a permission denied error. And this is due to a secondary security check that takes place to ensure that applications are not taking malicious actions on your enterprise content, either intentionally or unintentionally. So you need to go ahead over to your Box admin console. There's a sub-tab called Apps, and that's where you can authorize your applications. So this section you see on your screen here is only for JWT apps. There are two additional security settings that you can enable within your enterprise that may require you to also add OAuth 2 apps to your allow list. So any application that's authorized this way for JWT apps is a snapshot in time. So if a developer goes back and needs to make changes to the configuration tab in their developer console, the admin will have to come back here and reauthorize the app for them for those changes to take effect, and the developer will need to obtain a new token pair as well. Now that you've created your application and you've authorized it to act within your Box enterprise, I'd like to quickly review the tools that we provide our developers. So the first here is our SDKs, and we have 6 fully maintained SDK libraries in Java, Node, .NET, Python, and Android. If you don't see a language here that you're looking for that you'd like to develop with, there is a section on our developer docs for community projects, and those have more languages like Salesforce, Ruby, client-side JavaScript, and Chrome, which Box does not support, but they are maintained by members of our community. Then we have the Box CLI. And this is a tool that allows you to interact and manage Box services via a set of commands directly in your command line. So this eliminates the need to write any code to perform routine or bulk actions. So some things you might do with the CLI are creating users, adding collaborations, creating folders, and this tool also enables you to import CSV files to perform actions in bulk. At the end of my session, I have some details that will route you over to another session that deep dives into the CLI and all of its capabilities. Finally, we have the Box Postman Collection. And if you're not familiar with Postman, this is an application that allows you to build and test any HTTP requests. So you don't need to configure a full development environment to do this. And it's a great way of making API calls against your own enterprise without needing a lot of understanding of how they work. So we have a new Postman collection, and by installing this collection, you will essentially get templates for each of our endpoints, and all you have to do is plug in your relevant values. So for example, if you want to create a folder, it will provide you a template for that endpoint, and then you just enter the folder name that you'd like to be created and your token. Finally, I want to quickly review the different types of users. I see a lot of our customers struggle with this the most. So I briefly mentioned earlier, we have this idea of a service account and app users. So these are both programmatic accounts. They can only be accessed through the API, which means that they don't have login credentials. And these are specific to JWT apps only. So again, these are automatically generated as soon as you've authorized your application. And this is how you store content on the app level. Then we have managed users. And this is any user that's a part of the same enterprise as your application. And these are accessible both via the API or our web app directly. Then we have external users. And these are like managed users, except they aren't a part of the same enterprise as your application. So these are users that are collaborating on content that is owned by managed users of your enterprise. However, you will have limited ability to interact with these users via our API.
So today's demo, I'm going to base it off of a brand new guide that was just released on our developer docs site. And it is about sharing with synced Slack user groups. So if you're not familiar with Slack, it's a popular communication and productivity tool that allows for real-time coordination when working with individuals or groups within or outside of your company. When it's connected to a custom box application, the Slack channel structure along with the /command and event API systems, it can be used to provide a logical grouping and collaboration system for box files and folders. So at the end of this tutorial, you have a Slack bot that's deployed to a channel within your workspace. And that bot creates groups within Box based on the people within the channel, and then listens for Slack /commands in order to collaborate Box files and folders with everyone in the group. It will also automatically update user membership as users leave and join channels. So let me give you a quick run through of that functionality. And here I have my Slack instance. I'm going to go ahead and make a new channel. We'll call this demo. And I am going to add my manager, Matt, and the head of our org, John Herstein. Add them to this channel. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the app itself. I've called mine BoxWorks Demo. And it's that simple. If I go to my admin console within Box and take a look at my groups, I will see here that a new one was just created. And you may be wondering, well, what does this random string of letters and numbers mean? Well, if we pop back over to our group and take a look at the URL, we'll see this unique Slack channel ID. And this coordinates back here. So if I click in here and I take a look at the members in my group, I will see that John, myself, and Matt are all here. And let's say that John did his piece. He didn't want to be in this channel anymore, cluttering up his Slack, so he's decided to leave. I will kindly remove him. And we'll pop back over here and refresh the membership. And we will see that John is no longer in the group. I can also share files and folders as mentioned, so I can do that through my / command I've set up, which is box add. You'll see I have a helpful little tip here that says I need to either put a file folder and then the ID for that. So I'm going to do a folder. And in order to get your folder ID, the best and easiest way to do this is by visiting it within the Box web app. And you will be able to grab the ID here, copy that, it's a folder, put it here. And just by doing that, everyone within this channel will now have collaborator access to the content.
So I hope that you may decide to implement this custom functionality within your own Slack instances. But I did cover a lot of information today, so I want to provide you with a quick overview of everything we covered. So to get started, you want to visit developer.box.com to find all of our developer documentation. Then you're going to navigate over to our developer console to create your first app, where then you will authorize it. Maybe take a look at some of our developer tools to help you, and then you'll begin your development. I have seen a couple of great questions that have come in here as I've been speaking, so I'm going to take a few of those. And the first one is it possible to get a long-lived token that never expires? And I want to answer that by going back and giving an overview of tokens in general. So we have two types of tokens. We have our access tokens and refresh tokens. So access tokens live for 60 minutes. And after that 60 minutes are up, you will use your refresh token to get another one. So refresh tokens are valid for 60 days or 1 use. So unfortunately, it is not possible to have a token that truly lasts forever. However, our SDKs are great if you're just starting because they already have the built-in logic to do this token handling for you. So that's another issue I see come in a lot on the support side of things. People struggle a lot with getting that logic set. So go ahead and check out our SDKs. Another great question is regarding what services or extra resources we provide to developers. So you will find everything that you need on developer.box.com. You'll be able to subscribe to our developer newsletter. In addition, we have a link to our developer forum. So this is if it's not a break-fix question, which would go to support, and it's actually regarding how to. So members of our community and some of our Box team can hopefully help you out there. We also provide consulting services. So if you are interested in getting more of in-depth help and you want that code level and architectural guidance, get in touch with either your customer success manager or your account executive if you know who they are. Alternatively, you can just reach out to our sales team and they can route you appropriately. I hope I provided some great information for you to get started with the Box APIs. Our next session on this track is best practices for integrating with Box. So go ahead and check that one out. Or we have an admin heroes track session, which is an introduction to the command line interface.